A pleasant day to everyone. My name is Jerome D. Sorbano from PSC 1-2, and I will be your reporter for today's discussion. As a future police officer, it is critical that we need to understand what causes crime, what variables contribute to it, and how crimes evolve over time. In a time when evil triumphs over goodness in humanity, I'd like to know what motivates someone to commit such heinous act, and how our socioeconomic standing affects our ability to do such thing in order to survive. Once again, I'm Jerome and I will be discussing social disorganization theory and concentric zone theory. So let's get started. Let me first discuss my objective in this study. Firstly, to understand the main idea of these two theory. Second is to know how it helped the law enforcer to lessen or eliminate the crime. And third and the lastly is to determine where to begin investigating why a society is disorganization. Let me define to you the keywords in this study. What is disorganization? Disorganization occurs when there is a lack of proper planning and control, there is an absence of organization or orderly arrangement. In simple terms, disarrangement or disorder, while social relates to the society we live in or its organization. Coming from the definition given, we can now tell what social disorganization is all about. It is lack of control or organization in the one society, and we can tell that it is also about the hardship encountered by people who live in it, especially in a poor society. To better understand what it is, let me broadly discuss the social disorganization theory. Social disorganization is a theoretical perspective that explains ecological differences in level of crime based on structural and cultural factors shaping the nature of social order across community. Social disorganization refers to the inability of a community to realize the common values of its member and maintain effective social control. As a Kornhauser describes, social disorganization exists in the first instance when the structure and culture of a community are incapable of implementing and expressing the values of its own residents. According to the social disorganization theory, high rates of high school dropouts, unemployment, deteriorating infrastructure, and single parent at home are all variables that contribute to the high rates of crime in a community. And why are these people in such precarious position is a result of lack of resources because of poverty. And next, the Chicago School refers to a school of thought in sociology and criminology originating at the University of Chicago, whose work was influential in the early 20th century. And for us to be aware of social disorganization is the one of the most important theory what is developed by the Chicago School. Squatting, also known as squatter area. Squatter settlement is defined as low residential area, which has developed without legal right to the land or permission from the concerned authorities to build. And as a result of their illegal status, infrastructure and services are usually inadequate. Let me explain to you how people in the squatter area are related in this theory. Living in squatter area shows that a person cannot attend their basic needs, including a good shelter for their family. They are in deep poverty or economically challenged every day. It is the sad reality that we have to deal with. Coming from a poor family with no stable job and income, they have to do such dirty works in order to survive, or in our own language is to kapit sa patalim. According to Marcus Aurelius, poverty is the mother of crime, which I agree. Poverty increases social disorganization. Poverty is what motivates young people to engage in criminal activity and violence, like what I have said earlier. Factors like dropping out from school can lead to the variety of human behaviors, and it is a product of social disorganization. Some of them may be able to assist our community, but the reality is the sum of the people who belong to them are also the cause of its disorganization. We are all aware that this is more than just a theory, and it is really happening in the present time. And this is the reality from people who belong to it. And this is the bitter truth that our government can still resolve up until the present time. People in squatter area have to deal with many things. The security of their home that can be retrieved to them in a blink of an eye. Their daily needs, their medical care in general, their life. From the paces of daily life of those people, we can really tell that they can do horrible things in order to feed their family. In order to survive, because of it not, they will starve to death and die with the pain of being poor. Let's continue the discussion. In the 1942, two criminology researchers from the Chicago School of Criminology, they are Clifford Shaw and Henry D. McKay, developed social disorganization theory through their research. They have pointed to social causes of delinquency that seems to be located in specific geographical areas. Although the idea helped to a better understanding of delinquency, detractors point out that is that not explain why delinquency is concentrated in certain section of a city. Shaw and McKay found the rates of crime and delinquency exhibit a remarkable consistent patterning over many decades. In particular, the spatial pattern of rates revealed significant long-term stability even though the nationality structure of the population in inner city areas changed greatly over time. Shaw and McKay thus determined the crime and delinquency were not the result of personal characteristics of the residents who live in the neighborhoods but were tied to the neighborhoods themselves. Shaw and McKay discovered that there were four specific assumptions as an explanation of delinquency. The first assumption is the collapse of community-based controls and people living in disadvantaged neighborhoods are responding naturally to the environmental condition. The second is the rapid growth of immigration in urban disadvantaged neighborhoods. The third is business located closely to the disadvantaged neighborhoods that are influenced by ecological approach of competition and dominance. The fourth and the last assumption is disadvantaged urban neighborhoods lead the development of criminal values that replace normal society values. People under social disorganization respond naturally to their environment condition as they know its own nature. They know how the system works in a disadvantaged community. In simple words, they already know the drill on how to be able to go with the flow of this kind of community. The second factor is the significant increase in immigration in low-income metropolitan areas. The more people engaging in this society, the more broader it becomes. And the more people will have to suffer under its system. And since business play a vital role in economy, businesses that are placed near disadvantaged neighborhood are impacted by the ecological approach of competition and dominance. A fight between businesses owner and also trigger a crime, especially if if one owners want to become superior to the other business owners, they might eliminate their competitors through a crime. According to the fourth assumption, the normal society values have been replaced by criminal values. A socially organized community is characterized by solidarity, or an internal consensus on essential norms and values, cohesion, or a strong bond among neighbors and integration, with social interaction occurring on a regular basis. But conversely, a organized community has little solidarity among residents and lacks social cohesion or integration. According to the theory, socially disorganized neighborhoods have a lower levels of informal social control and thus experience higher crime rates when compared to the social organized neighborhoods. Let's be aware that all aspects of socially disorganized community influence an individual's behavior and attitude, which, when combined, might lead to involvement in criminal activities. Social disorganization theory is widely used as an important prediction to youth violence and crime. Therefore, allocation when it comes to the criminality, this theory can help government and law enforcement, legislator, and informing decision from the strategy that can help prevent the criminality in disadvantaged community to make it safer for the people living there. Let us be clear, social disorganization is a significant topic to discuss and requires a lot of attention, particularly from the government. Crime has been institutionalized, values have evolved, and people's lives have become much more difficult in this community. And the survival is what will only matter for people living there. And I hope I discussed the social disorganization theory and allow me to present to you the concentric zone theory. Concentric zone theory. What is concentric zone theory and what role it plays in relation with the first theory of social disorganization? Stay tuned and let's find out. The concentric zone model is an urban development model based on human ecology theory that views city as a series of five circular rings or zones, originating with the central business district. This model depicts the eternal organization of an urban social setting as a series of rings arranged by social groups. It was the first model to describe how different social groupings are distributed in city. The concept was created on the premise that a city growth begins in the center of spiral outward in series of rings. The consequence of the rings remains consistent, but their size can vary. As you can see, here the picture of concentric zone model. The visual representation of the concentric zone model or the zone of the city. According to the model, includes the central business district, transition zone, inner suburb, outer suburb, and the commuter zone. The social groups based on the socioeconomic status of household are distanced from the central area or downtown. The model implies that the extension of a social structure begins from the central business district. In other words, the low-earning people reside near the city center while the high-earning people live some distance away from the central area of the city, mainly because they can pay for their travel to and from the city center. And the concentric circles are based on the amount that people will pay for the land. And this value is based on the profits that are obtainable from maintaining a business on that land. The center of the town will have the highest number of customers, so it's profitable for retail activities. The concentric zone model of urbanization by Urbis Burgis in 1920 depicts the use of urban land as a set of concentric rings, with each ring devoted to different land use. Concentric zone theory is a variation that argues that crime increased toward the inner city area. The Burgis model remains useful as a concept explaining concentric urban development as a way to introduce complexity of urban land use and to explain urban growth. The theory itself argues that there is an increase of crime towards the inner city as a zone in transition, also known as the least desirable area to live in the city, and described as a melting pot of poor, immigrant, destitute, and criminal. Ignored by resident and landlord, these areas are distinct in their dilapidated housing and infrastructure. Drugs, prostitution, gang activity, and general economic misery are all prominent within the second zone. Next is in social ecology, or the study of how individuals interact with or respond to the environment around them, and says that the high rates of crime and other problems persist within the same neighborhoods over a long period of time regardless of who lives there. And it because they experience the most anomy and discrimination, causing them to struggle to adapt to the stresses and demands of their new society. And as a result, this area experiences high rates of social disorganization and dysfunction deviance to flourish. However, as each generation of immigrants assimilate, they move upward in the social structures, leaving behind disorganization, dysfunction, and deviance in that particular place. And this is the key characteristic of concentric zone theory, is that there is always a positive relationship between the household, economic status at the distance from the central business district. And it implies that wealthy families are farther from the city center than the household which are less affluent. And according to Ernest Burgess, this changing pattern of household brings about the process of invasion and succession in which the outward growth of the CBD involves that invasion of the neighboring residents, making them move outwards, resulting in this city expansion. The development of the city entails the transfer of growth pressure outwards to the successive neighborhoods. Burgess further pointed out that most residents in the inner city are those of low socioeconomic status and immigrants. Therefore, as a city expands, this group of people moves to the neighboring residential areas, making the wealthy group move farther away from the city center. And lastly, I will discuss how social disorganization and concentric theory relate to each other. The concept of social disorganization is that the determining factor on whether or not they will take part in illegal activities is through someone's community. Or in concentric theory, it will be measured on which ring or zone they belong to. People in socially disorganized places strive for survival. As I mentioned earlier is social disorganization theory, and the place they belong to is what concentric zone theory discusses. Where people who live in disorganized place belong to the zone of transition or the inner city, which I mentioned as melting pot of poor, immigrant, destitute, and criminals. To wrap up this presentation, I want to share my personal learning in these two theories that I have discussed. It is indeed hard to live in social disorganized community. People have to strive in order to make a living and support their everyday needs. It doesn't matter to them if it's illegal just to achieve their goal, which is to live. It saddened me that it is really happening in our present time and also result in many things. Children are being involved in violence and illegal acts. Imagine the trauma that it can give to them, and we can't do anything about it but to hope for better days. Indeed, our socioeconomic standing affects people. It affects their values and morality. And it is one of the reasons why there is still an increase of crime. Let me say to you what Alistair MacLean said before I end up this presentation. The point I make is simplify the cruelty and hate and intolerance are the monopoly of no particular race or creed or time. They have been with us since the world began and are still with us in every country in the world. I hope that everyone has enjoyed my presentation, and I am really grateful to have this chance to present the theory of social disorganization and concentric zone model. Again, I am Jerham Dipad Sarbano from BSc 1-2, and thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.